In the autumn of 1874, deep within the coal-stained peaks of West Virginia, 3 armed men disappeared near Elkhorn Creek without a trace. Days later, their bodies were found in shallow graves along the muddy banks, each bearing fatal gunshot wounds from a weapon their killer should never have been able to wield. The sole witness to their deaths was a 12-year-old boy named Thomas Weaver, who emerged from those mountains carrying a rifle nearly as tall as himself. His clothes were torn and bloodied, his voice eerily calm for a child who had just lost everything. Local officials buried the investigation as swiftly as they buried the dead, but the miners who uncovered those bodies still whisper about the boy's cold, unblinking stare and the 3 words he spoke when questioned. They deserved worse. The case files from that season remain locked in the Mercer County Courthouse basement, marked with a single cryptic note, "Matter resolved by mutual agreement. Further investigation suspended by order of Sheriff W. Thornton." Before we delve deeper into Thomas Weaver's story and the dark secrets buried with him in those Appalachian hills, make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell. Let us know in the comments where you're listening from, because these mountains hide more secrets than you might believe. What the authorities never revealed was that those 3 dead men weren't random victims of frontier justice. They were enforcers for the Consolidated Coal Company, and Thomas Weaver had just declared war on the most powerful corporation in West Virginia. But the true horror of this tale isn't what happened that September night by Elkhorn Creek, it's what came after, when a child's hunger for vengeance reshaped an entire region's understanding of fear. By 1874, the mountains of West Virginia had been transformed by an industry that devoured coal and men with equal ruthlessness. Small communities that had survived for generations on hunting and timber now trembled under the roar of mining equipment and the ceaseless rumble of coal trains. The air itself had changed, thick with coal dust and sulfur instead of pine and wildflowers. The Consolidated Coal Company had bought up vast stretches of land, bringing not just jobs but their own brand of justice, one that operated beyond the reach of the law. Company towns sprouted like poison mushrooms, their flimsy buildings already sinking as the mines beneath them expanded. In these isolated hollows, the coal police served as judge, jury, and executioner. They decided who could shop at the company store, whose children could attend school, and which families would be thrown out for disobedience. These enforcers were recruited from the dregs of post-war society, former soldiers, drifters, and criminals who found that corporate backing granted them both impunity and endless opportunities for cruelty. They lived in a ramshackle boarding house locals called Devil's Rest, where they spent their nights drinking rotgut whiskey and plotting new ways to intimidate. Families like the Weavers, who had lived in these mountains for generations, found themselves trapped between the promise of wages and the reality of debt slavery. The company paid in scrip that could only be spent at their own inflated stores, ensuring workers never escaped their debts. Housing was deducted from wages that never covered necessities. Thomas lived with his father, Samuel, and older brother, Jacob, in a cabin overlooking Elkhorn Creek, one of the last independent homesteads in the area. Samuel, a Union veteran, had hoped to return to farming after the war, but the coal company made that impossible. Now his hands were gnarled from years in the mines, his lungs scarred by dust. Jacob, 17 and hot-tempered, worked as a timber setter, dangerous labor that had already claimed lives due to neglected safety measures. When he complained, his supervisor hinted that troublemakers had a way of disappearing. Thomas was different. Small for his age, he possessed an unsettling intelligence, reading people with eerie accuracy. His grandfather, Ezekiel, had taught him to hunt, track, and shoot with deadly precision. The rifle he carried, .44 caliber Spencer repeater, was one of the most advanced weapons of its time, but Ezekiel's lessons went beyond marksmanship. He taught Thomas to move silently, to think like a predator, and to understand that survival sometimes meant becoming more dangerous than the threats around you. By September, Tensions between the miners and the company had reached a breaking point. Wages were cut, prices rose, and cave-ins became weekly occurrences. The coal police grew bolder, raiding homes and disappearing livestock. The end began when Samuel presented a petition detailing safety violations and threats against workers. 47 men had signed it, unaware that one was a company informant. When Samuel handed it to the foreman, Augustus Blackwood, the man tore it to pieces and ordered the signers to report to his office, a death sentence in disguise. That night, 3 coal police arrived at the Weaver cabin. Marcus Finch, a coal, died former Confederate, Dale Hutchinson, a brute who enjoyed violence, and James Crawford, a quiet killer who treated murder as routine. They informed Samuel he was fired and his family had 30 days to leave. When Jacob dared to ask about compensation, Hutchinson struck him down. Crawford pressed a gun to Samuel's head, whispering threats. Then they marched Samuel and Jacob into the woods, discussing how to dispose of them. Thomas, left behind, retrieved his rifle and followed. What happened next was no act of panic. Thomas had planned for this. He took position on a ledge overlooking Hangman's Hollow, where the men intended to bury his family. When they reached the clearing, he fired 3 precise shots that dropped each man before they could react. His father and brother, stunned, watched as the boy emerged from the trees, calm as if returning from a hunt. They were going to kill you, he said simply, but Thomas had prepared for more than just this night. He knew the company would retaliate, so he and his family staged their own deaths. Samuel and Jacob fled West Virginia, vanishing into new lives. Thomas remained the sole survivor of a massacre that never happened. Sheriff Thornton, no fool, suspected the truth but buried the case. The company, unwilling to risk further losses, let it go, but Thomas wasn't finished. Over the next year, a series of accidents befell the worst of the company's enforcers and overseers. A supervisor fell down a shaft. A store manager died of a mysterious puncture wound. Blackwood was found dead at his table, his face frozen in terror. Each body bore a slip of paper with a single word, justice. When Thornton finally tracked Thomas down, he found a boy who spoke like a seasoned soldier, detailing his kills with chilling detachment. They were diseases, Thomas said. I performed surgery on a sick community. In the end, Thomas struck a deal. The company would improve conditions, or he would continue his work. They complied. Safety measures appeared. Prices dropped. The coal police vanished. Thomas eventually left West Virginia, building a life elsewhere, but his influence lingered. Miners found unexpected allies, brutal supervisors softened, and for decades the mountains remembered the boy who taught the coal company the meaning of fear. When Thomas died in 1924, his public legacy was that of a philanthropist. But in the hills, stories persisted. Some say his ghost still walks those ridges, ensuring no child suffers as he did. What do you think? Could a child truly wage such a war, or does this story reveal what happens when cruelty forges its own reckoning? Let us know below, and if you want more tales of vengeance and shadow, subscribe and join us next time.